Welcome along, one and all, to round 9 of APPF1 Tier 2 Season 18. We are here at the iconic Suzuka circuit in Japan for the Japanese Grand Prix and the penultimate round of this championship, with the championship going right down to what should be a thrilling conclusion. It should be a spectacle to behold. Looking forward to the night, though, taking you through the action here tonight, it is, of course, your usual Tier 2 lineup of myself, Daka, and alongside me, as always, is the man himself, Ghost. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. If you're wondering why it's Daka streaming again this week, it's not because of technical issues this time. It's because I have to leave just before the end of the race, unfortunately. But that's fine. I will leave you in Daka's extremely capable hands when that time comes. But I will be here for most of the session. I'm very much looking forward to it. We could have a champion or two crowned today, but I think the points are close enough that I think that would be unlikely, and we are most likely going down to the final race in Mexico next week for both championships, which is very exciting. But Suzuka is a track where some drivers tend to thrive where they wouldn't on other circuits. It's one of those sorts of I'd say irregular circuits in terms of how the pace usually tends to be between people on most circuits. So let's see how it goes. I'm very much looking forward to it.
And we are just coming off the back of the Austrian Grand Prix, which threw up possibly the most topsy-turvy qualifying grid of the entire season. And you put out the ELO changes earlier today, and it was hilarious to see how much it had flipped. Yeah, all the drivers up at the top of the ELO rankings basically losing out, and all the drivers further down gaining. So we'll see if that carries over into this week's race, because one thing that race also demonstrated is the vulnerability, or the relative vulnerability, of the three title contenders. They have been by far the most consistent drivers this season, but they haven't dominated all the races. In fact, only one win between the three of them from the opening 8 rounds. So we'll see if they have better fortunes here tonight, but we've got this thrilling one-lap showdown in front of us with, I believe, Lawrence kicking the session off. So let's see how he takes on this incredible circuit over one lap.
Absolutely. I love qualifying around this circuit. Into turn 1 he goes flat out and then brakes, ready for turn 2, hits the apex nicely, a little too much on the inside on exit, but I'm sure he'll rectify that later in the session. Through the S's goes Lawrence, two-time Tier 2 champion, of course. Struggling a bit, though, with these corners. Seem to be quite hesitant on the throttle and going very wide there as he heads now through Dunlop and up to the two Degners. The first one, brake at the 50-meter board, breakneck corner. You might see some even going flat out through there as he goes through Degner 2 and now up towards the hairpin, where we might see a few daring overtake attempts in the race. Nicely done in second gear through there. Hard to get the throttle on exit because of the camber, but Lawrence deals with it relatively nicely without a real hint of oversteer. Now into Spoon Curve, one of the hardest corners on the circuit. Gets it nicely on the apex, but I don't think he got the line he wanted there. Wide on exit as well. Yeah, that's not what Lawrence would have wanted. Wide of the apex on both sort of sections of the corner. Now into the last couple of corners on the circuit, through 130R, flat out these days, of course, has been for a long, long time. Into the final chicane. Gets down the gears, doesn't quite cut it on the apex as much as he wanted. A bit of a scrappy lap from Lawrence, but it is going to top the timing sheets for now. 128.7 is the initial pace in Jammy Dodger. Well, you can tell how scrappy the lap was from Lawrence. He is 7/10 down on our current pole sitter.
Yeah, you could see the time he was leaving on the table throughout that lap. He's just pipped by JB by the tune of about 0.3 of a second. Jamie Dodger, of course, has been an incredibly dominant driver when he's been on form, of course, with 2 race wins on the season to this point. So going very, very strongly out there at the moment, and half a second clear. We'll see if anyone else is able to challenge across the line. Scott, who, of course, just narrowly missed out on Poland, who had a storming drive in the race in Austria, gets into P2 about 0.2 of a second back. Ench pops himself, interestingly enough, into P4. Now, we've seen these three in these top title contenders. It's been very track specific, I feel, many of them, in terms of their qualifying performance. We've seen them up at the sharp end many times, but also struggling, as we saw, of course, last time out in Austria for essentially all three of them. Eng, a solid start to the session. Cavalis, though, moves up into P3, but it is Jamie Dodger, and well, we saw how much time was possible to find over Lawrence's lap, but you can see actually just how well that time of Jamie Dodger's is holding up. The only driver currently into the 127s, off to a flying start in this session. I think there's some nerves out there, some scrappy laps going through. I think Tricky Budayak is coming towards the end of his lap, so we'll see where the Kick Sauber driver is able to go. Goes third on a 28-1 and in a race where he absolutely needs to bolster his championship challenges with potentially missing the final round. He goes third for the moment, the best start of the title contenders, but it is Jamie Dodger on top, and as we've seen before, the championship contenders off solidly well, better off than in Austria, but still unable to quite take a stranglehold in that over that one lap pace.
Yeah, and Denko invalidated and came back into the pits, so he's straight away gone out again. Rubialski retires from the session. That looks like in the pit lane. Oh, I think he has a quali ban, that's why. But Denko, he's got work to do. He needs to have a good qualifying here, and he needs to have a good race. Qualifying so important around this circuit. It's hard to overtake, and you can get caught in a train, and all it takes is one person to make a mistake in that train just up ahead of you, and suddenly you're not in contention at all for the race win anymore. So Denko needs to nail a lap here. We saw Runes in Tier 3 yesterday have a pretty substandard race, and unfortunately for him, his main title contender LB managed to win the race. So he now is 1 point behind going into the final round next week, which is very exciting. But it seems to be a bit of a bogey track for him, this one. So we'll see what he can do here in Tier 2. I'm assuming he has the line on for this, but I don't know. Maybe he's getting more practice. Aces goes to P4 on old tyres, so that's a good sign for him. But we saw last week, and actually a few times from Jamie Dodger, that he tends to do very, very good banker laps that he then struggles to improve on too much. So very consistent over one lap. But I don't think, based on past performances, we're going to see the same sort of ramping up of lap times from him as we are possibly from the other drivers. So he's probably got some work to do as well, especially as Drogon gets within 18 thousandths.
Drogon did a 27.7 in last night's race, so he's got plenty of speed out there on this track, and of course he did take pole position last time out in Austria. He is really, really flying over one lap at the moment and going very strongly in this session too, just narrowly missing out on that time of Jamie Dodger. And you're very right on Jamie Dodger. I definitely remember, of course, even in Vegas where he took pole position, he pretty much set that time right at the start of the session. I think he found a few thousandths of a second and no more throughout the remainder of qualifying. So we'll see if that trend is going to continue. I expect the pole time is going to dip at least into the mid-27s, maybe even a little lower than that, if these drivers hook up the pace that is in the track and deliver the kind of lap times that they are capable of over the lane. I think that was Robsu also on old tyres, very old tyres in fact, going up into 12th position, 129.1. Again, that time of Ace is looking fairly strong, given the fact that he did lap on them. The tyre deck is quite low around this track compared to most others, which we'll see more of in the race, but it does mean maybe there's more chance of running it in qualifying. Tier to the line in the Aston Martin goes third, good lap, 28.1. Denko behind, of course, chasing a championship, but he's 6/10 slower to the first two sectors than Tier, and loses furthermore in the final sector, only 11th, and his one lap pace has been suffering a bit lately, and with the big pressure on in the standings, he is only, well actually he's only 2 places behind Eng, but 3/10 of a second. There's work to do for Denko. He just can't seem to hook it up over the single lap at the moment.
Yeah, I think our three title contenders, there could be a bit of a changing of the guard next season, because they've been the most consistent from day one, but since then, sort of in the second half of the season especially, we've seen other drivers start to eclipse them fairly consistently week on week, especially in qualifying pace. The three of them are still very strong in races, and we see them gain places when they have no right to each week, such as, I mean, Ench, how on earth did he get a podium last week after all was said and done? So it's It's going to be tough for them, I think, next season to keep this going because they can have the consistency, but it's just the raw pace. I think they've been lacking a bit in the second half of the season at times. I think Triku's been the fastest of them in raw pace, but his consistency not quite on the level of Ench or maybe even Denko as well, and that's why we're not seeing him far ahead of them in the standings. But yeah, it's an exciting situation this season, but I think all three of them will be struggling to be at the front next season, especially if Denko's nerf persists into season 19. A lot of people on laps right now. I'm not sure who's closest to the line.
Lawrence in the Ferrari seems to be reasonably far along, so we'll keep an eye on him. 28.7 at the moment. We said that there's plenty of time to find. Takes a lot of curb on the inside of the first part of Spoon Curve, and actually takes a little bit of grass there, which is going to hurt his turn in a little bit. So at the moment, just two drivers into the 1 minute 27s. Triku, the fastest of the title contenders, once again on a 28.1. But still some way off the pole time at the moment. Lawrence coming down. You can see he used an awful lot of his battery. You want to save quite a lot for that run out of a Spoon Curve because you're flat out all the way down towards the Casio Triangle at the end of the lap. So you need your battery for there. Lawrence does find a good chunk of time. In fact, goes into 7th position. 1:28.3 is the time for the Ferrari man. The Ferraris with a sliver of hope, I would say, at the moment in the Constructors' Championship. 29 points adrift of Sauber. Haas just a little bit further up than that. That appears to be the battle at the moment, but Sauber seem to have potentially enough in hand. We shall see, though. Scott, he also had a bit of a scruffy run heading through Spoon Curve, but he is slightly up on his time. I think Sumo might be a little bit further along coming to the line in the other McLaren. He does a 1:28.5. Scott just up in front now. Lots of battery up to the line. Now he uses the last of his deployment. It's a 28 flat. Finds just a little bit of time. Goes into 3rd position for the moment. So it is still Jammy Dodger. That banker time holding up better than I expected. And considering, again, we were talking about this last week as well, but considering that we did have a 1:27.7 by Drogon last night in Tier 3, you suspect that with this kind of field of drivers, there's still plenty more time in the track.
Yeah, I think I was kind of expecting weird situations like that between tiers in Austria, and Tier 1 was no different. The times for a lot of drivers weren't really beating those of Tier 2. Because it's just such a weird track, so short, so few corners, and people can just find a lot of time where they otherwise wouldn't on most other tracks. But this one, I didn't expect this kind of situation, so it's interesting to see. I wonder if anyone can improve. Jamie Dodger certainly wasn't able to improve on his banker. He's headed back into the pits. Triku has backed out of his current lap. Aces is 2/10 up though, so he might have a shot, and that's only in Sector 1 alone. So if he can nail Spoon Curve here that he comes to, nicely turned in on the left, a little wide of the apex, and the second part loses the rear as well on exit. That's probably going to be lap over. He might well still be up on his time, but that's going to cost him so much time all the way down the straight here. Yeah, there we go. He's lost 3/10 from that mistake. So Aces not improving this time around. 5 minutes to go. Ench coming to the line, one of the title contenders. That's much better from him, P6. But these times are very, very close indeed. And Cavalis has got himself to P3 as well. 1/10, less than 1/10 between the top four.
Super competitive, and that could be a very important lap from Cavalis in the context of the Constructors' Championship as well. Sauber defending that lead. They came under pressure throughout the last round. In the end, they came away with a decent enough haul and only a 1-point reduction of their lead, which did not look likely earlier on in the race, especially with the Aces running so well last time out. At the moment, Kick Sauber have the edge of that battle, and Ench is out of the session. Try and get it back in indeed. He is at the moment sitting in the pit lane anyway, so if he can get back in quick enough, it may not have much impact. We shall see. Again, of course, for our championship leader, we dearly hope that he's able to get a clear run throughout the rest of this session. Meanwhile, let's keep an eye on Denko in the Ferrari. Needs a big lap here. Currently sat buried down in 15th. We know how hard it is to move up at this track. He's going much, much better to the first two sectors, nearly 6/10 of a second up, and he saves more battery for the run towards the Casio Triangle than most others. Late on the brakes, though, runs a bit deep. Gets out all over the curb of the second part, keeps it nicely on traction, but how much did that mistake cost him? Up to the line he comes. He goes 10th on a 28.4. It's going to be a mighty effort to get that car turned around in the pits and back out again. He currently sits 10th, and with, well, you can see the likes of Aces and Lawrence just less than a tenth of a second in front of him. That could be very costly for Denko on a qualifying session where he needs every position that he can muster up.
Yeah, he'll be very disappointed with that. He had definitely potential for the top 7 with that lap, and then that last braking zone just braked a tiny bit too late and went wide of the apex. He recovered well, to be fair, went nicely over the curb on the left-hander of the chicane, but yeah, unfortunately, it did cost him some time, as you can see. So 10th for now. We know he's capable of moving up in the race, but it is a tricky track to do that, so it will take a stellar drive for him to do that. JB goes to P8. He's another driver who's been steadily improving of late. He was sort of a back marker towards the latter end of last season and the start of this season, but he's starting to get in the groove now of F1 25, you feel, because he's more in the midfield, in the sort of upper or at least the middle of the midfield these days than he was before. So JB on the rise at the moment, could be one to watch for next season. And no one else really on a lap as everyone tries to get some clear air for their final runs. 2 minutes 20 seconds to go. Denko flies into the pit lane. He is going to be very close on time. I don't think he's going to make it, but it's going to be seconds either way.
Yeah, it's going to come down to a very, very tight margin. I was watching Drogon as well, of course. Again, we know he's capable of more than his 27.9, but he dropped it on the exit of the spoon curve. He was slightly up in the first sector, looking good up to that point, but just got on an inside curve, which is so easy to do. And Drogon, he's gone back into the pits, and I think that is going to be session done for the Italian, and that's going to be bitterly disappointing with the speed that we know he has. So the door is open for the rest, and it is still Jamie Dodger's banker lap, as we've seen throughout the last couple of rounds, really holding up super well throughout this session. Can it stand up against this final assault from the rest of the tier 2 grid? Avenir is the furthest driver along. He got very far over to the outside curve, heading through Degnan 1, managed to recover well. His first sector was very fast, so we'll see what he can do throughout the rest of the lap. Just locking up though, heading into the hairpin. Jamie Dodger is just tailing him on his out lap. He should get back out there and get a lap done very easily. So we'll keep an eye on all the way here. Aces is just behind on the track too. Of course, we know potentially the speed that he has in this session as well. Avenir just gets offline through the second part of Spoon Curve. You saw him getting too tight on the entry and understeering on the exit. That's going to cost him plenty on the run down towards the Casio Triangle, and that advantage that he built up in the first 2 sectors is largely eroded away, so it looks as though he's not going to find much more. Aces is slightly down in the first sector and actually backed off of his lap, so he is going to go again with a little bit more wear and tear on those tyres. So we'll see what he can do. Avenir to the line, goes into 12th position on a 28.4. You suspect there was more in the tank though for the Alpine driver. Who's going to be next up to step up to the plate? Scott is absolutely flying to the first 2 sectors, nearly half a second up. Scott to the line again. Could it be another big week? Biggie, it's a 1:27.6 for Scott, and his incredible form and his tier 2 return continues. Scott M89 goes to the top, and does anyone in this session have anything for that time? A 27.6 is going to take some beating, Ghost.
That is unbelievable from Scott. Sumo's been disqualified somehow. I think he spun at Dunlop, and yeah, he's been disqualified for facing the wrong way, which is a shame for him. He looked up on his time, but if he'd spun, he wasn't going to improve anyway. Denko did run out of time. He's at the chicane now, but it's too little too late. I think about 10 seconds too late in the end. Cavalis also just about ran out of time. I think he was just coming to the line. He was maybe 1 or 2 seconds away from getting another lap in, but he fails, so he'll be P4 at best. Jamie Dodger wide at Spoon Curve, and that is going to be that for him. I think he's coming down towards the sector line, but once again his banker lap is standing his own test of time at the moment, and he's going to be P2 at best. Can anyone else challenge for the front row? Can anyone challenge Scott for pole? That's the other question. That is a mighty lap from the former EPP sprint champion. Enchilada coming through Spoon Curve at the moment, but he's not on a lap. He's not using battery, so no improvement for the Irishman. Aces is a 10th up in the middle sector. We'll see what he can do as he comes through the final chicane. We've got Lawrence as well coming through to finish his last lap. He goes to P4. Great effort from Lawrence. Lawrence. What can Aces versus Kings manage just behind? He goes to... Oh no, he stays P10. He lost time in the final chicane, and that is that. No more improvements, actually. Everyone, or not everyone, but most drivers not improving on that final run. The pressure was telling at the end of the session, and it's Scott who blows the field away.
And I think just the only driver that got a good clean lap on the board. I suspect a lot of drivers out there were capable of getting well into those 127s. Again, the pole time, I would say, slower than what I expected. Of course, take nothing away from Scott. That was a stellar performance, and he did what he needed to do when other drivers fell by the wayside. Again, it's Jammy Dodger getting that incredible banker lap and not finding the time. Drogon, we know, was capable of more. I think Lawrence will be absolutely delighted to end up in fourth, but you saw the likes of Cavalis, Denko running out of time and scrappy laps across the board. It really was a messy qualifying session, and it was the man who executed best. Again, we don't know if he was maybe the fastest overall, but certainly put the best lap together. He pips Jammy Dodger to pole by pretty much a third of a second. Drogon in P3, Lawrence P4 will be delighted, just ahead of Cavalis by 1,000th, then Tyr coming next. Ench 7th, the best of the championship contenders, but right alongside him is Triku Badaik, the top 10 rounded out by JB and Aces, who's another driver who would have hoped for more. I think he did that time at the start of that session on old tyres. Denko in 11th, again struggling over one lap, just ahead of Avenir. Next comes Runes in the other Alpine. Robso next up, then Jacko Lacko, the last of the drivers to set a time, and then I think it was Rubialski and Sumo who got himself disqualified for the session out after a spin at Dunlop Curve. So we head into the Grand Prix itself then, and another bit of a surprise. We do have an overcast start to the race, so we'll keep an eye on that, but that was another tough one for our championship contenders, and really just a session where just getting a solid, mistake-free, error-free lap on the board was a decisive factor in how that spread has ended up.
Absolutely. I think those three are going to be very happy that they've got such a massive points lead over everyone else, because otherwise they'd be in serious trouble at this stage. But no, it is about those three for this title. And it's going to be another similar story to last week. Not quite as bad for the three of them. They were pretty much bottom of the pile, all three of them, last week in Austria. This week they're more mid-grid, so more chances for them to get back into this race. But it's also a tougher track to get back into. And Austria is a tough track by itself to overtake when you're in a big DRS train. But yeah, interesting situation here. Scott looking for a second win on the bounce as he roars back into Tier 2. And Jammy Dodger alongside him. Sumo and Rupielski at the back is quite an interesting prospect as well. No love lost between those two. But yeah, there's a lot of stories to watch in this race, and the grid is not quite as mixed up as it was last week, but it's still not really as we expect it to be from the rest of this season.
It's not, and I think more importantly, in the context of this week alone, I don't think it reflects the overall pace of this grid. I think that there are some drivers who are very out of position in terms of what their race pace could end up being. That's going to be one to look out for because it is so difficult to move up at this track. There isn't as much, assuming we do get a dry race, which isn't a guarantee because we do have some very angry looking skies behind us. There isn't as much of a strategic variance though in a dry race. It is an easy one stop, but we'll see how it unfolds because we are going into the Japanese Grand Prix. We have 5 lights. And the Japanese Grand Prix, Esgo from the front, Scott leads away from Jammy Dodger and gets away nicely. Drogon in the slipstream trying to follow up behind his teammate on the night, but it's Scott who leads Jammy Dodger heading into the first turn in the opening sector. Let's see how things are going to unfold behind. Couple of cars running 2 by 2. Cavalis and Tyr going side by side into the S section. The Aston Martin tucks in behind. Next comes the 2 Haas drivers. It's much more bunched up at the rear of the field. Unsurprisingly, it's Sumo battling it out with the likes of Runes. Rubialski's made a good start up alongside Jacko Lacko. They're going back and forth. As up in front, there's a Haas off the road of Enchilada. Ench is wide at Dunlop, and a big error for the championship leader, getting caught into all sorts of drama to take the one. He ran into the back of Jacko Lacko, managed to survive. Rubialski was off the track in the background, rejoins now just in front of the likes of Sumo, and Ench himself down in 15th position. There's more contact with Sumo and end plates flying. I think that was off the McLaren. Avenir's gone round in the Alpine, but what a disastrous start for Enchilada. He recovers now, but he's well down the field, and the championship leader is in big jeopardy here at Suzuka.
God, it could have been even worse for him there. Runes, Sumo, and Ench all got sandwiched there on the exit of the hairpin. They didn't quite realise they were 3 wide, and Ench just about survives. I don't know how he's got no damage, if he does. Ace is up to 6th. He has started on the soft tyres, which is an interesting strategy called down the inside of Tier at 130R. Cavalis and JB side by side at the same corner. Cavalis very deep into the chicane, and that's the expected result. A little too deep, and he loses the place to JB, but stays ahead of his teammate Triku. Triku and Denko next to each other on the grid at the moment, and with Ench down in 14th, they'll know that there's a big opportunity for both of them here. Tier chasing after Aces, or trying to stay with the soft tyre running Haas, loses the rear out of turn 2, but holds on to it. But interesting strategies across the board. It's a fairly even split with mediums and hards, a slight preference to mediums, especially towards the front of the grid, but Aces on the softs is a big wild card in these early laps, and those tyres are going to degrade very quickly. I definitely think he's on a 2-stop, but it's what tyres he's going to go on next that's the question, and how well it's going to work for him. Lawrence on the highest running, hard running car at the moment. He's in P4, but trying to stay with the mediums is tough work for him.
It is indeed. And Aces, yeah, we know he can manage tyres very well, and I'm not ruling out the possibility of a 1-stop, because the tyre deg is actually quite low around this track compared to most of the circuits that we've visited throughout the season. I was looking further down the grid. I think, yeah, Runes picked up damage in a bit of a altercation with Robsu, and these guys have been well detached from the field with Sumo and Avenir until Runes running off the road this week has really been a bit of a nightmare for the Australian driver, and he drops behind Sumo. Up at the front, it's much calmer stuff, and it's Scott leading from Jammy Dodger from Drogon fairly comfortably at the moment. The Mercedes driver holding off the Red Bull. Jammy Dodger has saved, though, much of his battery, and it looks like he wants to go on the offensive at the end of lap 2, picking up that slipstream up towards turn number 1 they go. Aces challenging Lawrence further back as well. Jammy Dodger gets close, not close enough though, but Aces will breeze past Lawrence to continue that soft tyre saw charge as he moves up into 4th position and tries to get up towards the 3 race leaders. And initially, this soft tyre call has worked out very, very nicely for Aces, but we'll see how well he can hold on to that tyre as the stint progresses. I don't think Lawrence will mind getting overtaken by the Haas driver. If he can stick with him, he can drag him up towards the leaders, but that's a very hard task, it seems, because Aces is flying. Those soft tyres are giving him all the grip he needs.
The undercut's also extremely strong around this circuit, so Aces is a huge danger to the rest of the cars around him at the moment, especially that top 3. They can't discount him just because his softs are going to degrade fairly quickly. Tier on the warpath on Lawrence, who makes a mistake out of the hairpin, but manages to hold on to it, stays within DRS of Aces just about. So we'll see if he can continue to do that through the chicane, which is where the detection point is, just before that. But it's fairly calm through most of the grid at the moment after a chaotic first couple of laps. Ench, somehow, once again, he's got this trait of just coming back from the dead in Tier 2, especially this season. And, well, I thought he was going to be well down at the back with the likes of where Robsu and Avenir and Runes possibly are at the moment. But no, he is still in the lead DRS train, and he's looking for an overtake now on Jackalacko as Jammy Dodger takes the lead of the race through turn 1. I don't think Scott put up too much of a fight there, but Jammy, with a big mistake on the exit of turn 2, somehow manages to hold it, and the 2 Mercedes hounding him through the S's, but no further change in the top 3 right now as Aces continues to hunt them down and drags Lawrence and pretty much most of the grid along with him.
Yeah, they got separation in the opening couple of laps, those top 3 with Lawrence behind them on the hards. Now it's Aces on the mediums, charging back towards them. Drogon, look at how close he sits behind his teammate. And of course, not full time, I have to say, Scott, of course, jumping in as a reserve. He gets up onto the back of his teammate, can't quite make the move, heading in towards the hairpin. Aces, I imagine it's going to start to turn in the next couple of laps. He isn't hounding those top 3 like he was the drivers he was chasing down before. But comfortably able to stay in the DRS range for the moment. I expect the pit stop will come relatively soon, though, certainly in the next couple of laps. Lawrence and Tier come next. Edge did manage to get past Jackalacko. He also set the fastest lap of the race on the last lap lap, so his pace and clean air does look to be really, really strong. So Edge certainly in with a good chance in this race. And look at this situation we have in the very midfield with Trico, Denko, and Edge running all line astern on the circuit for P9, 10, and 11. What a bizarre situation that is. But Edge does seem to have some tremendous speed out there, and he's rapidly chasing down as Denko gets alongside Trico on the exit of the Casio Triangle. Must have been an error from the Kexerba driver, and he tries to cover off the charging. He's out the session.
No.
Trico Badayak has gone. His connection's gone again. Hopefully he can get back in very, very quickly. But for a championship contender, and one that we probably don't expect to see in the final round, that would be gutting. He slips, of course, down the field. Trico again, hopefully he can regain control, but there is going to be major damage to his chances in this race, unfortunately. So that, of course, promotes Denko and Ench up the field, and well, I don't think they'll be happy to see that necessarily, but it will certainly help both of them out. So Denko to P9, Ench to P10. Hopefully Trico can get himself back in, but yeah, he's going to need some better fortune in this race to turn things around now.
Oh, that's so unfortunate for Triku. Hate to see people disconnect from sessions, but JB and Tier side by side, the two Aston Martins trying to cover off Cavalis, who's taking advantage of their little battle, looking to the inside, but backs out eventually. Rubialski up to P12 now, still trying to chase down the lead DRS train. Cavalis down the inside, a spoon curve. What a move this would be on Tier. A tiny touch between them, but no harm done. And Cavalis does get his way through. Fantastic overtake from the Lithuanian. And Denko looking to follow along. Into P8 goes the Greek driver, and he's doing what he needs to do at the moment after a sort of mid-qualifying session from him. But Tier looking to the inside of the chicane. Goodness me. Backs out just in time. But Denko will be pleased to have a car between him and Ench. Tier on the curb there on the exit. I don't know how he survived, but Denko has no ERS left at all, and he could be vulnerable to a move here. Cavalis on the inside, JP just ahead. He has to back out, but Ench doesn't back out on Tier, and he's up to P9, and Denko and Ench both getting past Tier in just a matter of a few corners. So 8th and 9th, the top two in the championship, and well, this is big implications with Denko just 9 points behind Ench going into this race. If he could do with a result that gets him within 4, because then it's all about the win in the final race next week.
Yeah, disastrous lap that was from Tier, slipping from the very front of the train to the back. That's also opened the gap in front of JB. Ench, though, looks to be absolutely flying out there. His pace looks phenomenal, and he chases down the Ferrari in front of him. Cavalis getting a bit out of shape through the hairpin. JB leading these guys along at the moment. All this battling, though, has opened up the gap to the front of the race. It is Jamie Dodger from Scott from Drogon, and Ace is unable to live with them now, with the soft tyres beginning to degrade. He's taken him to lap 6. We'll see how much further he goes, but Lawrence is starting to come back at him. I suspect that Denko and especially Ench will be still looking to move up all the best they can in this train and try and get the pace going a little bit more. It doesn't seem as though currently they're able to chase it down with JB on the front, so maybe it could be done in the pits, because we know that unless there's more battling, unless there's a different situation being thrown up, it is going to be very difficult to move up. Aces does come in as Trico does get back in the lobby, but the damage to his race very much done at this point. Ench is actually under pressure, though. Tier coming back at him to the inside of turn 1, and Ench out of battery, tries to go right outside, but gets caught off guard, runs off the road. He's going to re-emerge side by side, and Rubialski's going to go through Ench. He turned in and just had to avoid the Aston Martin on the apex. That's how he ended up out there, and all, or very much of that great work he did in the last couple of laps has been undone. Just didn't have the battery to cover off Tier, and then, worse still, found himself off the road. So that's a big mistake and a big setback for Ench and Ladderdon, and a chance for Denko. He's chasing down JB. Cavalis managing to overhaul JB further up the road, and Denko getting very interested in the Aston Martin in front of him, heading towards the hairpin. Elects to think better of it, though. He knows he's got a championship to think about. He gets a really nice run through the entrance of the hairpin, in the end unable to quite move through. So Tier looking a bit better off now these hard tyres are maybe kicking in, and Ench, that's going to be a big blow to his race. He was all over the back of his rival, and now there's much more work to do for the Haas driver.
Yeah, we're really at the business end of the season now, and the pressure is starting to bite, and it's an uncharacteristic mistake that from Ench, but even it just goes to show, even a former champion, season 15 tier 2 champion, of course, Enchiladad, but the pressure still bites at these crucial moments, and he'll be looking to get himself back in this, and Rubialski looking to make up even more for his quali ban that he had to take today. He's up to P10 at the moment and continuing to make his way up the grid. He's got Jack Alako next up, who had a very poor qualifying but has made his way up as well. Here comes Rubialski down the inside of the McLaren driver. Jacko's going to defend well to the outside of turn 1, and Rubialski having to back out of that one. Denko still hounding the back of this Aston Martin, but he's got to think about Tyr as well, who's coming well and truly into play with those hard tyres. And Cavalis at the moment trying to get rid of JB, which would help out Denko as well. But it's a poor line through Dunlop, and that's going to cost him a couple of tenths and relieve a bit of pressure from JB. Despite a poor entry into Degner 1, he is far enough ahead that Denko can't think of a move into the hairpin. The top 3 fairly calm meanwhile, as Jammy Dodger continues to lead from Scott and Drogon. Jammy really starting to turn up the pace as well at the front of the field. 2.6 seconds to the hard tyre running Ferrari of Lawrence, who himself is 3 seconds ahead of Cavalis. He's very much on his own, but I don't think he'll be concerned about that at all. He'll be very happy with where he is right now, Lawrence.
Yeah, and of course he is going to get stronger and stronger as the stint unfolds, and Cavalis will struggle to chase that gap back down. What Cavalis has done, though, is drop JB out of DRS, which may just be the opportunity that Denko was looking for. Denko chasing the Aston Martin down towards the Casio Triangle, but the exit is going to be imperative. Who's going to get out of the corner better between the two of them? Fairly solid for both, and Tyr is right on the scene as well to try and capitalise. We've seen Tyr pull off some spectacular moves on straights before, but here comes Denko towards the inside, and he's going to clear JB easily, so he manages to keep the Aston Martins at bay, and now he's got clean air to drive into. Cavalis up the road, that is his target, as JB is going to pull over to the side of the road and actually allowing his teammate to go round the outside, so recognising that Tyr has the pace maybe at this stage in the race, and Tyr can try and stick with Denko and follow the Ferrari through. His race really being with Lawrence a few seconds further up the road, of course, on the same sort of strategy, and Rubialski as well on the hards, trying to make progress from behind. So the rest of the train falling into lane. Denko does finally have clean air to go for, and he will be very happy to see that. He's already putting the likes of Tyr to the sword out there, so Denko can try and make progress in this race, and we'll see if the likes of Enge can charge, and certainly the charge still being put on by Rubialski. He's swarming this way and that to try and get past Jack Olako. His hard tyres are giving him every chance to attack, as he's got another run towards Spud Curve. He's going to end up on the outside though as he goes to the inside through 200R. A little bit of grass there. He's going to try and hang it out there in the end. Jack Olako a little bit more entry speed, but too much. Runs a little bit wide. Rubialski comes back in a bit of contact on the exit, but the McLaren has to yield. Enge will try and follow through. He's got plenty of battery to use, but it looks like he's going to wait his turn. So Rubialski, very hard charging, very aggressive, very risky, as we come to know from him. He runs at P9 on the road, and his pace looks very solid out there.
Yeah, really wants to make use of those hard tyres at this early stage of the race. He's doing very well at the moment in that V-carb. Enge just keeping patient and, well, not keeping patient anymore. He's straight into the pit lane, wanting to get that undercut, avoiding the 10-second penalty for speeding. I think he braked very early for that pit lane. He knows the deal at this point. But Denko, at the moment, not able to catch Cavalis, and in fact is now being hounded once again by Tyr through Sector 1 here. 1.7 to Cavalis. I think Denko was having much more success with a car in front of him. To give him a reference, as Daka will know very well from his experience with Elite. But yeah, he seems to be struggling for pace at this stage. And Drogon's round at Degner 2. Very easy place to lose the car. Doesn't look like he sustained damage. And there's more spinners further back. That's Robsu and Aces. Look like they've come together at Dunlop. Don't know what's happened there, but it's going to be free positions for Enge, especially on his teammate Aces. And Aces, after such a promising start to this race, he'll be gutted with that. But still a long way to go, as Jammy Dodger and Scott now relieved of the pressure of a third car with them, and Lawrence up to P3 onto the podium, but Drogon immediately right behind the Ferrari through 130R. He's whoring that slipstream down towards the last chicane, but he can't quite get past that Ferrari. He's going to have to wait for a better opportunity. He's got the DRS, but no, he's going to peel into the pit lane. I think that's a wise choice from the Mercedes driver. Get that undercut, try and get himself back into the race for the win.
And Denko further back coming in, surely as a reaction to Ench. Ench actually, his teammate, can't say he's doing him any favours as they're running side by side at 130R. Aces is not letting this one go. And Ench can't quite make it around the outside and potentially offsetting some of the undercut gains that he was looking for. He wanted to jump his way up this train. Let's see how successful he's going to be. Ace is now dragging him down the straight. The likes of Denko and JB are going to be very close to them on the track. So here comes Ench. He'll blast past his teammate. There is JB. He is going to get out in front of the Aston Martin. So he's made some progress and he is critically getting up towards Denko up in front of him. And Denko will be held up by Robso. So it's a better situation for Ench. I'm not sure he'll be too happy with his teammate giving him such a hard scrap out there. But it's really JB that's lost out in all of that. And Ench up towards P13. And that shows how powerful the undercut could prove to be. But how effective could this undercut be versus the rest of the drivers up there, as Denko and Ench get caught up behind a much slower moving Williams of Robsu in the way, and Denko and Ench going to be very crucial here as they try and navigate the Williams in front.
Yeah, Denko's still got to get those tyres up to temperature as well, as Triku does a daring overtake on Avenir on the run to Spoon Curve, and he gets it done. But yeah, unfortunately that disconnect putting him well out of this one unless we have a safety car or he finds some electric pace. Jammy Dodger though comes in from the lead of the race. We haven't seen much of the leaders so far today, but Scott now back into the lead after starting from pole position, and Jammy is going to get that undercut. I think it's going to be a tall order for Scott to come out ahead of the Red Bull once he comes into the pits. Jammy exits. You see that lovely sloped pit exit and entry is kind of, I don't know if it's unique to this track, as Avenir in the background there goes on the inside of Triku Bidayak and retakes that place from the Czech driver. But yeah, Scott 4.5 seconds ahead of Lawrence. He's fairly comfortable in that respect, but he's going to be very worried about that undercut from Jammy Dodger, as we've got Robsu dropping a ton of positions there. Not sure what happened to him, as Ace is now on the inside of Ench. Goodness me, can you imagine if the Hasses had collided in the S's, but they get away with the Aces yields just about, and Ench continuing to try and chase after Denko, who is just behind Cavalis, which I wasn't expecting. I thought they would undercut everyone who pitted from this point, but no, Cavalis coming out ahead of them, and that could be very crucial indeed.
I think getting held up behind Robso, even briefly, was something that set them back. Aces again on the outside, Aces, and both of them break extraordinarily late. Aces is giving nothing to his championship contending teammate. Ench managing to fend it off, but I did not think this was the battle that we'd be focusing on out on the track. Ench having to defend, manages to do so at the moment, but he's going to be bitterly frustrated. Scott in a fight for the win. Let's not forget, just overshooting it into the pit lane, and that is a 10-second penalty. That is going to be massively costly for the man in the Mercedes at the moment. And Jammy Dodger, you suspect, is going to be in the ascendancy. He's had to fight his way through the mess of Triku and Avenir. Now with DRS on the straight, Scott, is he going to get out in front of these guys? It looks as though he will. He's going to get, just behind the Red Bull, and round the outside goes Avenir. Scott lunges turn 2. Make sure he sees off the Alpine. If he didn't pick up that penalty, he would be in a superlative position at the moment. But with that penalty, Jammy Dodger is firmly in the ascendancy now in this battle up at the front. He's got 3 drivers in front of him who have to pit. Drogon we saw losing ground with that spin. Scott trailing him now with the time penalty. He does have fresher tyres, but this race looks to be falling into the hands of Jammy Dodger at the moment.
It does indeed. Runes unfortunately bringing his race to an early end in the pit lane, but Lawrence now leads the race. I think probably the first time he's led a race all season, so he'll be enjoying his current position. Of course, still yet to pit, and he'll get onto those medium tyres in a few laps time, I would imagine, and take them to the end of the race. But he's doing well at the moment, Lawrence. He's going to be in trouble though from the likes of Cavalis, Denko and that lot if they are catching with this undercut, because he was only about 4 seconds in front of them, and this undercut's going to gain them quite a bit of time in theory. Denko sticking with Cavalis and Ench not able to make any progress himself, he'll be okay with where he is at the moment, I think. Only losing 1 point to Denko isn't going to be his most primary concern. He just wants to avoid losing too many, because he'll still have an 8-point lead in the championship if it ends like this. Jamie Dodger sets the fastest lap on those fresh tyres, as Avenir now under pressure from Triku, who pulls to the inside, and these two once again swapping places. Triku up to P7, trying to stay with the fresh hard tyres of Drogon ahead, but I don't think they're going to be able to cope with his electric pace in that Mercedes today. In fact, he's catching Scott, you know, 2.2 seconds. That's a lot closer than he was when he pitted, so he's perhaps still got a little bit of a chance in this race, but of course his tyres are going to show their age towards the end of this race.
There was a big effort actually from Jamie Dodger to try and drop Scott, and both of them drained the majority of their battery reserves. But all the while Drogon has managed to close up that gap. He does seem to have incredible speed around this circuit, and we'll see how costly that spin may prove to be, but it certainly doesn't seem all done for Jamie Dodger just yet, with Drogon still providing something of a threat behind at the moment. So, heading to half distance now, Lawrence does lead. Tyr's chipped away at the gap, and Rubielski trying to get up towards Tyr and clear air. Oh, Scott's round! Scott's gone round at a smooth curve, and yet another error creeps in after what looked like a sterling start to his return to Tier 2 action. This race has fallen out of his hands, and he re-emerges in the DRS train with significant wing damage to his car. He drops in right behind Enchiladadad, but now his chances of even getting on the podium, which he still had a good chance of doing, are going to fall by the wayside. He's going to come under pressure from his old mate Aces, heading in towards the chicane at the Casio Triangle, but I imagine he's going to come in because that looks like too much damage to sustain, and indeed he does. Scott 89, he will at least serve his penalty at the moment, but his race will now hinge on potentially getting a safety car behind Robs, who has gone round, heading into the pit lane in the Williams. So errors really starting to creep in out there as JB attacks Aces, heading towards turn number 3. Oh my goodness, they run side by side all the way through. The Haas driver does not yield, but neither does the Aston Martin. Eventually has to slot it behind as they go back and forth through the first sector. Aces seeing him off in the end after that mistake from Scott kind of caught Aces up and opening up the gap towards the Cavalis train, whose trails Denko and Enchiladadad. Denko, interestingly enough though, really struggling to live with the kick Sauber. He does have slightly older tyres on his car, and if he loses DRS, the door may be open for Edge. They're only fighting for a 2-point swing at the moment, but how valuable could that be in the end story of this championship?
Yeah, absolutely. What a wild series of events in the last couple of minutes. Scott pretty much binning his entire race there, and having to come into the pits, and then Aces and JB side by side through the S's. Denko, by the way, meanwhile struggling to stay with the DRS of Cavalis. The Sauber driver seems to have very good pace at this stage in the race, but Denko brings it back on the straight. They've both not got too much ERS in the bank, so fairly equal there. Ench trying to stay within range of the Ferrari as well, but Denko with a poor exit out of the Casio Triangle. He's got the DRS, but he's not got a lot of battery left, and he's going to be in real danger of losing DRS to Cavalis, and we could well see quite a high stakes battle between the title contenders if he does drop out of range of that Sauber. Sumo also coming into the pits. He's had a pretty lackluster race today, unfortunately. He loves this circuit, does Sumo, but doesn't tend to have the best luck around here. And similar story today for him, unfortunately. Jamie Dodger, meanwhile, 1.3 behind Rubielski. He is starting to drop Drogon a bit more again. 2.8 is now the gap. But he could be catching this V-Carb at an inopportune place here, especially if he doesn't get DRS down to turn 1. But even if he does, I think he's going to be a little too far behind, unless Rubielski has a particularly poor exit. But yeah, Jamie Dodger going to be in trouble if he can't get past this V-Carb down towards the S's, and could potentially lose quite a bit of time to his nearest challenger in the Mercedes.
He could, but I'm also expecting pit stops to come very soon, and potentially even on this lap. In fact, Lawrence comes in from the lead. Will Tyr follow him suit? Yes, he will. What does Rubielski do? This could have much more of a bearing on the race. He stays out. Jamie Dodger now draining a lot of his battery. He wants to get past quick, and at this point, so he charges down towards turn 1 using the bulk of his battery and gets the move done. done. He saved so much of it, and that was so crucial for him to get that move done, and that actually probably gained him time in the long run because he managed to benefit from that DRS. Very well executed from Jamie Dodger. He's firmly in control of this race. Tier re-emerges on the medium tyres, so we'll see how this alternate strategy is going to work. He's actually very close to his teammate, so he stayed very much in the race, and that Cavalis-led train could be a real target for Tier, so Tier could have a good prospect going forward in this race. Lawrence, on the other hand, though, faring even better. Well, he did lose out in terms of track position to these guys. They are actually catching the likes of Triku, who's doing another mental stint at 17 laps it's going to be on the medium tyres. I imagine just trying to hang it out for a safety car. Cavalis coming up towards him and Avenir, Denko and Ench as well, and this allows Lawrence to bring his way back in. We'll see what he can manage on fresh medium tyres. So the alternate strategy, he gave up the track possession, but now he has the tyre advantage. He will try and drive his way through, and I think with a potential podium potentially on the cards, he is not going to give this one up very easily. So Lawrence in the ascendancy here. We'll see if he can track down that train in front.
Drogon dispatching of Rubialski down towards 130R. That is going to have the caveat that he won't get DRS to turn 1. I'm sure Rubialski will likely be in the pits this lap, and no, doesn't actually peel in, so maybe going for the softs for a final stint. Tier getting past JB at the same point in track further back, but Lawrence now right behind Enchilada. Avenir and Triku both come in, and Triku, his day from bad to worse. A 10-second penalty, and this might well be him well and truly out of the championship fight here, unfortunately, for the Czech driver. What a season he's had, but just a few too many poor results, I think, have hampered his title charge this season. But it's not over yet. Still about 10 laps to go. And Enchilada is hounding Denko, who still will not drop away from Cavalis. And Ench will have seen that gap going to just about over a second so many times. But Denko holding firm lap after lap and staying in that crucial range. He'll want to at least finish ahead of Ench and bring the gap down to 8 points to going into the finale in Mexico next week. And he certainly won't want Ench to get ahead and bring it up to 10 points, because double digits, it may only be 2 points more, but I think mentally it feels like a lot more, and it's certainly with the point system of APP, it does actually lend itself to quite a bit more points gap in terms of the positions that you have to be to sustain it. So Denko, high pressure here for him in these last 9 laps.
Denko has absolutely phenomenal straight line speed. His wings must be so low. The two, as Lawrence is coming under pressure. The other Ferrari now attacking the championship leader. This is going to be so interesting. Out of the Casio Triangle they go. Lawrence has far more grip, of course. Tucks into the slipstream of Enchilada, and Ench has no battery to defend. So Lawrence is going to braze his way through, and there's nothing that Enchilada can do to hold him back. Lawrence to P6 on the road. Now his teammate runs in front of him. What is the call going to be at Ferrari, I wonder, with Lawrence with far more pace, but Denko with so much more to lose and gain. Denko definitely has very low wings. He's able to gain so much back on the straight, but he struggles so much in the corners. He's using battery, of course, in those critical areas, but he loses so much in that high downforce first sector and just tries to make it up as best he can in the power sections at the end of the race. You could see how much more pace, though, Lawrence has at his disposal. Is he going to try and work his way past his teammate? Of course, again, Denko does have a championship to try and win, of course. Further behind, the other hard starter, now medium runner, is coming into play. Tier is chasing down this train too. He was a few seconds adrift of where Lawrence was, but already very much arriving on the scene, and Tier is very much in play here. And Enchilada is the first driver on his hit list. He does run wide heading through Spoon Curve, but holds on to it for the moment. Denko, again, making so much ground at the end of this lap in this power section. He claws it back towards Cavalis, and he's able to survive. He can drop outside of the DRS range as Rubialski finally comes in from P3. That's going to open up this to be more of a podium battle. Cavalis still leading away. Denko, what's going to happen between the Ferraris? Oh my goodness, they almost touch! Lawrence has to swerve out of the way of his teammate, and in the end he's going to get through. Dead clatter against the wall. He doesn't have any visible damage at least, but that was a scary moment as Lawrence nearly had his brilliant drive offset. He manages to hold on to the car, but that could have been an absolute disaster for the Scuderia.
Oh, a quick turn with DRS and DRS open and ERS deployed. It was always going to be potential for disaster, but he somehow does not seem to have taken damage from that impact. And he is now roaring after Cavalis for the last position on the podium. He's flying Lawrence and looking for a second podium on the bounce. He'll be delighted with his current form, but Enchilada right behind still, his main championship rival and possibly his only championship rival now in the driver's title. And let's not forget about the constructors either. Ferrari running 4 and 5. Yes, Cavalis is in P3, but honestly, I would expect Lawrence to take third place in this race. He is flying in that Ferrari on the medium tyres, and I think Cavalis is going to have a very hard time keeping him behind. So potential 3-5 for Ferrari compared to a 4-11, and could be even worse for Tricky with the penalty for the pit lane. So some points to be gained. They're 20 points behind going into this, but they could bring it all the way down to maybe single figures, but more like around 12 or 13. So potential there for the Scuderia, and Denko still keeping Ench at bay, and Tyr is going to be looking to find his way through as well. Denko will be hoping that he can.
He will certainly be hoping that any kind of car can get in between himself and Enge. Of course, if Tyr does manage to dispatch of Enge, then Denko is the next driver on his hit list. So Denko is going to be very, very watchable. But Denko's straight line speed is definitely keeping him in the game here and able to fend off. Even if Enge gets in there with DRS, it's going to be difficult for Enge or Tyr, I think, to be able to pull off that sort of move. But on they go now into the final stages of this race. Lawrence chasing down Cavalis. Of course, his medium tyre advantage will start to fade in the laps to come, so he will want to get on with things as quick as he can. He needs a cleaner run than he got on the last lap. Last lap he spun up the tyres heading out of the Casio Triangle and couldn't quite make the move. Further back though, Tyr is certainly looking to make the move. He's got lots of battery too, far more than Enchilada in front of him, so if he can get a good run down the straight out of any one of these corners, Enge getting onto the curve through Spoon Curve holds it very well, I have to say, but he's under heavy pressure. He's been trying to find any which way past Denko throughout the vast majority of this race, but he may have to look behind rather than in front into the final laps of this Japanese Grand Prix. Jamie Dodger leads comfortably from Drogon. Can Lawrence get to Cavalis? How are the exits heading out of the Casio Triangle? Again, a bit of a chirp for the rear wheels of the Ferrari. He's about 6/10 back, but he's going on the offensive. This time Cavalis knows he's got to defend, but he's running out of battery. Here comes the Ferrari, but he might just run out of track. He looks to the inside, but just can't draw close enough. Further back, Tyr also attacking Enge. He looked like he squeezed onto the curb at turn 1. Enge managing to see him off. So the medium tyres may be losing just a little bit of that edge. Cavalis, despite running out of battery at the end of the straight, or relatively speaking, managed to just fend off Lawrence as Rubialski gets a very important penalty potentially as he tries to chase down the likes of JB and Jack Olako in front of him. Enge is now under pressure from Tyr again, and Tyr blasts past heading towards the Technos, but he immediately gets a penalty and he's off the road. Oh, Tyr, just as he finally managed to crack the code of Enchilada, makes a fatal error at a very difficult corner, and Tyr set well back now. His charge demoted behind. Enge will be very relieved to see that, but Tyr getting the move done in an unorthodox place, but just misjudging Jegner 1. That's going to be a major setback, and it's going to be far more difficult for him to make any kind of impression now.
Oh, undone in just a few seconds, that overtake from Tyr, and with the penalty as well, like you said, I think he is consigned to P7, most likely, unless there's more penalties to come. But Lawrence hounding the back of the Sauber. Surely this is his time to take this podium position. He'll be desperate for it. He will really want to take this podium for a second one in a row, but a bad exit from the Casio Triangle is going to cost him another lap, I think. He's not got enough ERS. Cavalis hasn't got a lot, but but Lawrence is going to run out of track again. Down to turn 1, or is he? Here he goes, he's up the inside and he takes the place. Lawrence from absolutely nowhere on the exit of the Casio Triangle somehow takes the place anyway, and he's up to P3. And Denko now, well, I was about to talk about the possibility of if Lawrence couldn't get past Cavalis, whether he would let Denko through at the end, but now Denko's got bigger problems because Ench is right behind him and the Ferrari driver seems to be losing pace through Dunlop. He's certainly lost pace through there. Ench with a much better line, but Denko is going to be under heavy pressure here, and a penalty for Cavalis now as well for track limits could be critical, especially if he can stay with Lawrence, because it could mean only one of Denko and Ench take advantage of it, whoever's in front. Ench right behind the Ferrari through the hairpin, but he can't quite make a move and he has to stay behind. But we're going to have a fantastic battle between the top two in the championship in these last few laps. I unfortunately have to take my leave at this point. I will leave you in Daka's extremely capable hands for these last few laps. I'm gutted because this is absolutely brilliant.
See you later, Ghost. Thanks so much, as always. But let's see how the rest of this race will unfold. Ench chasing down Denko. He's able to sit so closely. And, of course, Denko, without the battery now to properly defend, he does not have the DRS protection either. So this looks like a very, very prime opportunity. And Ench gets a far better exit out of the Casio Triangle. Tira's chasing down too, but loses the rear and sets himself back. Ench now trying to draw up alongside. You can see how fast Denko is in a straight line, but it's not going to be fast enough. Ench is through. Ench is in P5 on the road, and Denko finally has resisted. His defense is cracked in the end, and Ench moves up into position number 5. He can try and put a car between himself and Denko in the final results as well, because of Cavalis' penalty, and Denko's pace just seems to be falling off a cliff in the final stages of this Japanese Grand Prix. So now Ench on the charge. He's looking at P4 here at the moment. If he can hang on, he does get a bit of an awkward run heading through Degner 1, but this would be a superlative recovery drive and a major step closer towards this championship. So Ench now runs in position number 5 behind Rubialski, continuing his charge. He manages to make his way past JB. We didn't catch it, but he did get past Jackalacco earlier on. He's going to try and make progress with his own 3-second time penalty in hand. But Ench working his way up towards Cavalis. If Denko can go with him, he can also take advantage of the penalty of Cavalis, and if he can stay in DRS, maybe he can come back. We can see how fast he is in a straight line, and that is going to be a bit of an issue for Ench if he can't himself get into DRS range of Cavalis. So he's got work to do himself as the championship leader. Denko trying to stay with him, trying to apply any kind of pressure he can. There are 3 laps left in this Japanese Grand Prix. So, at the front of this train, you can see Denko manages to hang on to the DRS. He has Tier very closely for company, but can't quite, manages to hold him off. Tier unable to quite find a way through. Behind, we saw Aces peeling out. Jackalacco and JB going side by side into turn 1. The McLaren driver manages to just find his way through against the Aston Martin. Will try and stay with Rubialski, but I think that's going to be a very tough task. Rubialski, of course, with far better tyres. Cavalis now finally distanced from Lawrence, and Lawrence looks to be fairly comfortably driving towards a podium. Up at the front, Jamie Dodger, seems as though Drogon has the slight advantage in terms of raw pace, but that spin, ultimately the game changer in this race. I think not managing to hook up the lap in qualifying, also a big deal. And Jamie Dodger, out of the 3 drivers who have contended this race, when he's just had by far the cleanest and calmest race, and with just over 2 laps to go, just has to bring the car home. Further up the road though, Ench's charge continues as he tries to stamp his authority on this championship. He has rapidly chased down Cavalis despite having the oldest tyres of anyone in this field. We've seen in the past Ench struggling late in stints, but the absolute opposite appears to be coming true here. He's of course worried about Denko. He's unfortunately for him managed to drag Denko back with him, so Denko is also taking advantage of Cavalis' penalty, but Ench still looking to apply that charge on the track, and you want any kind of buffer he can against the Ferrari driver. Both of them out of BRS, and Tier may look to take advantage as he blasts to the inside of the Ferrari, and he's going to go through to P number 6, and there's nothing Denko can do about it. He will benefit from his penalty. He will benefit from the penalty of Cavalis. but giving up possession on track and looks very, very likely to be beaten by Enchiladadad today, who looks set for an almost certain P4 and an excellent, exemplary recovery drive, as we've grown so used to seeing from Eng, especially in the back end of this season, and has defined his championship charge, and he continues in that form, looking again at a position number 4 finish. Of course, he's gonna have a slight minute chance of getting Lawrence, but I do think that's pretty much beyond him. There is the fastest lap, currently going the way of Triku Badayak, which will be, of course, a little bit of a help for his own championship challenge, but I think the damage already done, and I do expect him again to be missing the final round. He needed to come out of this race, I think, in the championship lead, and it does not look like that is going to happen, unfortunately, for the Czech driver. Up at the front, though, Jammy Dodger, he has been gradually closed down by Drogon. He may be trying to manage this, make sure he doesn't get any penalties. We're seeing them creep in the back end of this race. Drogon has showed brilliant pace throughout this race, but he may just run out of laps. 1.3 seconds is the gap over the start-finish line. We've been keeping an eye on this midfield battle throughout much of this race. Enchiladadad, he's got Tyr for company, but of course he won't care much about that. His eyes will still be firmly set 2 places behind him on Denko, but Denko doesn't seem to have any prospect to move up in this train. In fact, I'm not sure any driver does. It seems as though these guys are just going to coast in all together. So, Jammy Dodger, of course, he is already a winner of 2 Grand Prix this season. In fact, 2 of the last 3 races, he won the British Grand Prix at the reverse circuit incredibly from the very back of the grid with a stunning strategy, and he managed to see off Triku Badayak for the win on that occasion. Then in Vegas, he showed incredible speed to put the car on pole, and then got set back royally in the early stage of the race. I believe he got a penalty in the pit lane, and his winning chances seem to have faded away. But of course, that infamous incident at the end of the race in Las Vegas between Rubialski and Triku Badayak, and then the penalty for Enchiladadad opened the door for Jammy Dodger to take away the race win, and he's looking for a third one here. No other driver this year has even won more than 1 race, and Jammy Dodger heading towards a third here in Suzuka. He is driven flawlessly from start to finish, and Jammy Dodger takes his 3rd win of the season. Drogon follows him home in P2. What could have been without that spin? Further behind, maybe this man will be the happiest of all drivers as he heads towards the line. Lawrence, after a tumultuous season, is gonna grab position number 3. Cavalis comes next, but a penalty will be costly. Eng gets P4. What a recovery drive. Denko will follow him over the line in at P5. He managed to beat Cavalis with Cavalis' penalty, but how much could that matter? That move that Eng made with a few laps to go. Tyr comes next, will also be gutted with the penalty. Then comes Jackalako P8, just holding off Rubialski in the end. JB comes next, 10. Race is P11, then Avenir Triku in P13. Probably spelling the end of his championship challenge. Sumo will come next in 14th, a quiet race for him, and then Scott, another driver who must be asking what could have been. He had the speed, of course, he put the car on pole, he looked absolutely brilliant in the first couple of laps, but a series of errors has set his race well back, and after a fairy tale start to life back in Tier 2 this season, in the end, this has been one to forget for the Mercedes driver, and that is 9 of 10 rounds of Tier 2 now in the books. And we'll calculate where this may stand in terms of the championship very, very shortly, so we shall see, of course. Congratulations, though, to Jammy Dodger. Brilliant drive again. You suspect if he was full-time from the start of the season and he could have made more rounds, he could have been the one out front in this championship. In the end, that's not to be, but in the back half of this season, he has been the man. There is no doubt about that. So, let's try and work out where everything stands in terms of the championship, in terms of the 3 main contenders. Eng came into this race 6 points up on Triku, 9 on Denko. He came in on 104 points. He gets P4, no pole position, no fastest lap. So let's see, he got P4 for the tune of 12 points. So he goes on to 116. Of course, this is all provisional. We don't know about the stewards. I didn't see too much in that race, but of course that all remains to be seen. Denko, of course, followed him home. He gets P5 on the day, and he will go into that final round 10 points adrift. And of course, Ghost mentioned earlier on in the stream how potentially getting in there with a double-digit deficit can be very psychologically daunting, and that I do very much agree with. It's going to be a very hard task for Denko, especially as none of those championship contenders really seem to have race-winning form at the moment. So that's going to be really problematic for those guys. Of course, Triku, again, we well calculate, he did come into the race on 95 points, but only gaining 3 for P13. He did get the fastest lap, so that will bring him to 99. It'll be 17 points off the lead. If he does attend, he's mathematically in with a shot, but practically will not be the case at all, very unfortunately for him. And I do think that will pretty much spell the end for his championship challenge. So we do come in to the final race with the championship still technically in the balance, but it is looking like it's going the way of the Season 15 champion. We'll see how that unfolds. Out of the guys who finished on the podium today, Lawrence is the only guy I can talk to based on platform issues. I'll try and get him in. I'm just going to ask him quickly, and then we'll see. Hopefully we can have a little conversation with Lawrence. He'll be certainly delighted with how this race has unfolded. There's no question about that. A great drive, and we'll wait to hear from him. We'll just see if I can get him in for an interview. I fully expect that I will. But yeah, we do go in. I'm quite glad that we do actually have a championship challenge going into the final race, but it is certainly very much in Ench's hands ahead of that final showdown in Mexico. So we'll keep an eye on that. In terms of the constructors, I'm not quite as sure on the calculations, but really it wasn't a great day in the end for Sauber, especially Cavaliers' penalty was really a big blow for them. Haas, though, will get some points back, but not many. Ferrari are really the big winners. It's just the question of whether or not they can make up that deficit. They came in 29 points back. I can say for a certainty that the constructors' fight will go down to the final race, and there will be 3 teams involved, but we'll see the exact actualities on the front of the points at that point. But I'm going to jump over into the Tier 2 party, and we are going to get to speak to Lawrence, so just get that sorted in a second, and we'll have a bit of a conversation with our third place finisher on the day. So let's just get a hold of the man himself there. There we go. And we should get him in very, very shortly indeed. So, yeah, I mean, he had a terrific job out there. Again, it's a bit of a shame, of course, because of the platform issues. We can't speak to Jamie Dodger or Drogon, because there's certainly plenty that I would have loved to hear from those guys. But we won't get to hear from them on this occasion. We will hear from this man, though. Lawrence has joined me in the Tier 2 party, and I suspect, despite the fact that it was Jamie Georgia coming away from with the race win, I do think that this man may be the most pleased driver of all. Lawrence, congratulations on a fantastic result, and I'll just get us started right away because, well, this season it's been let's be fair, very difficult for you up to this point, but. A surprise P2 last time out in Austria, and then backing it up again, of course. Again, we don't know about stewards, but where does this form come from?
I don't know, really. Just a couple of tracks which I like. I quite like Suzuka, and yeah, I quite like Mexico next week as well, so hopefully I can make it a hat-trick. But yeah, tough race. I thought I'll go different to everybody on the strategy. Everyone around me started on the mediums. Aces started on the softs, I think it was. So I thought, sod it, I'll go for the hards. And yeah, took them as far as I could go and then just bolted on the mediums and tried to see what I could do from there.
Yeah, indeed. Were you concerned at all with that strategy? When we saw how fast Aces was in the first couple of laps, were you concerned about losing too much ground and rendering that strategy kind of ineffective? But you seem to hold on pretty well. Were you confident that you could pull that off and open up the second stint for you with a good start?
I think the only bit where I was worried was when I was behind Cavalis. There was a couple of laps I got DRS and I just couldn't get the overtake done. So I had to burn a lot more ERS than I would have liked going into 130R just to be right on his rear wing. But thankfully, that did the trick.
Yes, and it did. And you said you were looking for a hat trick going into the final race as well. Another thing to note, especially with Denko also getting a solid result tonight, you were by far the highest scoring team here tonight, and you do move a good deal closer in that Constructors' Championship. It seemed like a bit of a tall order. You're 29 points going into the race, but compared to Sauber and Haas, you've clawed back an awful lot of points. Of course, you're not really fighting for much in the Drivers' Championship at the moment, so is that the big goal heading into next week?
For me personally, yes, Constructors would be nice. Also, just trying to help Denko wrap up the driver's title would also be probably better. I know Denko is fully invested in trying to win this title. So yeah, we'll take it one race at a time and go from there.
Yes, indeed. Well, congratulations on another great result tonight. You're really coming strong at the back end of this season. Well done, Lawrence. And I will give I'll go for driver of the day. It's pretty much a toss-up between the man in this party and the man that won the race, Jamie Dodger. And I think that the sentimental pick would probably be Lawrence. I think it's hard to overlook. I know.
Yes, finally, a driver of the day.
I said you're the sentimental pick, and you weren't going to be my actual pick.
Go on, it's fine. Break my heart. It's fine. I
feel bad now. I'm sorry. No, I mean, Jamie Dodger was pretty much flawless tonight, so it's hard to go against that. But yeah, certainly you had a case. You definitely had a case. I'm trying to do de-escalation at this point. Maybe if I don't know if you keep getting podiums, maybe you'll get it one time. You never know.
Yes. Sorry.
Maybe a race win even. We shall see. How is Mexico as a track for you? Do you think?
Yeah, I've ran around there in another league fairly recently and did really well. So. Obviously, it's tier 2. I find is a lot more competitive, so it will be probably just as hard. So just take it one race at a time and go from there.
Go from there, indeed. So the constructors still on. Watch for Ferrari making that charge next week. Watch for the Drivers' Championship. Lawrence's teammate Denko still in with a chance. 10 points. He will be trailing Enge going into the final race. Can he pull it off? It is going to be a tough one, but we shall see. Do not look away for the next and final round of Season 18 of Tier 2 in APPF1. The Mexican Grand Prix should be an absolute cracker, but I think that is going to be all for the Japanese Grand Prix for tonight. So from myself, of course, Ghost unable to join me for the remainder of the stream, but you will be seeing both of us next week, and maybe Lawrence as well, potentially. We shall see. But from myself and Lawrence alongside me as well, it is goodbye, and until next time, we'll see you later.